It's Friday, June 20th. In the headlines, PEP results are out. In business news, Jamaican fitness brand Express Fitness expands to California. Regionally, Barbados to establish first of its kind climate school. And in sports, Olympic medalists Roger Stoner and Rajinja Campbell reportedly switch allegiance to Turkey. This is the weekend news on PBC Jamaica. I'm Simone Absalom Gale. The Education Ministry reported mixed results during a press conference about the primary exit profile exams on Friday. Approximately 33,434 students registered to take the 2025 primary exit profile exams. This includes 17,042 boys and 16,392 girls, as well as 45 students with special needs.
There's cause for celebration in Jamaica's education sector as results from the 2025 Primary Exit Profile, or PEP, show notable improvements in student performance, especially in mathematics and language arts. Education Minister Dr. Dana Morris-Dixon shared the results at a press conference Friday morning, describing the gains as a significant step forward, particularly for students who began their primary education during the peak of the COVID-19 pandemic.
The good news is that the results are better than they were last year. So I'll start with that. So for parents who are watching, just calm down a little bit. The students did significantly, they did better than last year, and that is something that we always want to celebrate. And as a ministry, we are working to improve the results each year.
From grades 4 to 6, significant strides were made, especially in mathematics. The number of students at the lowest level dropped from 25% last year to just 3% this year.
In grade 4, 25.5% of them were at the beginning stage, meaning they were very basic in maths. But if we look by grade 6 this year, only 3% of them were seen to be at the beginning level. That's a big, big deal.
Language arts also saw a turnaround, jumping from 34% proficiency in grade 4 to 69% by grade 6.
So 69% of our students are at the proficient or highly proficient level in relation to language arts. So we are very pleased to see those improvements that you see there. And if you look at the overall performance, you can see it.
The Education Minister also shared the results for science and social studies, noting that they were on the right track.
In science, 70% of our students were proficient or highly proficient. In social studies, 72% of our students were proficient or highly proficient. And in language arts, 69% of our students were proficient. We are on our way. These were not the results last year or the year before, which tells us that we're on the right track.
The ministry is also hailing the transformation of several underperforming schools. 6 institutions that were previously flagged as critical in language arts and mathematics have now reached 100% proficiency in those subjects. Reporting for the news on PBCJ, I am Danita Rodney.
At least 768 educational institutions across Jamaica have been designated as official hurricane shelters under the Ministry of Education, offering a critical refuge for the country's most vulnerable citizens during natural disasters. The Ministry of Education has confirmed that these facilities are part of a strategic response to what is projected to be an active and potentially severe hurricane season. While the ministry has made strides in enhancing disaster preparedness, some school administrators remain concerned particularly about the adequacy of sanitation facilities at shelter sites. According to the press, for the 2025-2026 financial year, the ministry has allocated $628 million specifically for hurricane readiness across 204 schools. This funding is part of a broader $5.8 billion infrastructure and maintenance budget. The ministry, in a statement to the Gleaner, explains, quote, "With projections of increased storm activity and more intense weather systems due to the impact of climate change, the ministry has taken deliberate and comprehensive steps to ensure the resilience of the education sector, the safety of its stakeholders, and the continuity of learning." End quote. The ministry emphasized that preparedness is both a priority and a national imperative, given the vital role schools play in emergency response efforts. The Embassy of the Dominican Republic in Jamaica has donated over 500 books to the University of the West Indies Mona campus. The donation, presented by Her Excellency Angie Martinez, Ambassador of the Dominican Republic, marks a significant milestone in the 60th anniversary of diplomatic relations between the Dominican Republic and Jamaica. Held under the theme, Dominican Voices, Literature, Connecting Countries, a Gift of Knowledge, the ceremony brought together distinguished members of the academic community, the diplomatic corps, and invited guests. The literary collection features work from some of the Dominican Republic's most renowned and important authors.
The University of the West Indies stands as one of the most influential academic institutions in the Caribbean and the world, a beacon of knowledge that has shaped leaders, thinkers, and visionaries. The donation we are making today are over 500 books authored by some of the Dominican Republic's most brilliant and celebrated minds.
I think that the contribution today from the Dominican Republic is helping us to better appreciate and understand our brothers and sisters from the Latin side of the Caribbean.
This is more than a donation. It is a bridge of knowledge, a gift of history, and a literary legacy that will inspire generations to come.
People are of the view that purchasing a home at a young age is far from being possible. The National Housing Trust offers various loan options for housing, with loan limits varying based on the type of purchase and the number of applicants. Those who have been contributing to the NHT for a year or more can apply. A single applicant can access up to $9 million. While that can be a daunting responsibility for some young people, some people think it's best to smash that goal while you're young. The question arises though, renting or buying a home at a young age? What are the disadvantages and advantages that lies with both options? Chanel Matthews took to the streets to find out.
What are the disadvantages and advantages with renting versus buying a home at a young age?
Well, buying a house, it's yours. The disadvantage now is that in Jamaica right now, poor people cannot buy a house. Renting, it is easier because once you can afford the rent, it's okay. The disadvantage is like sometimes the landlord, they don't live up to expectations, like doing repairs and things like that. That is the only drawback.
So most young people are not cultured to own a home at a young age. We're more interested in getting a car and just moving out and paying rent so we can have our independence. But if we were cultured and taught how to be truly financially independent, we will focus more on owning an asset. At home is an asset and is an investment. So those are the advantages. It's a legacy where you can have for yourself and leave for people. It's also where you can rent out and make money. A lot of people don't know that. The disadvantages is that it's very hard to attain living here. The NHT, that what it grants us is not enough. So it has to be a collaboration most times for you to even get a leeway into owning a home. Sometimes, again, it's location. Obviously, where you're located is very important. A lot of people follow where the money is, where you can get a job, where you can get better schools for your children and stuff like that. Sometimes the more affordable places are not the best places. And even though when places become affordable and you own it, after a while, you know, our home is an investment forever. That community might become volatile. So it becomes disadvantageous.
All right, so with renting, it can be a bit tricky. First of all, it depends on the person's income. So with renting now, I'd say the advantage for that is, I guess you'll have options, and it will be probably be a bit more easier on the individual based on their income and their accessibility to what they can afford. Opposed to buying a home for a young person, it's very difficult.
You see, the landlord them is not reasonable, you know. Some places, you know, although, you know, garrison and thing, you know, it is very high. And next thing we are showing NHT from a long time, and most of the people who show NHT a couple of years ago, we don't have a choice. With them government not assisting us in getting a house or something like that, you know. And rent is very expensive, so most of the people have to live in the slum right now. And the salary that we're getting right now is very low, cannot pay rent. So it's hard to cope, you know. That's why Afro-Tree and downtown is full of all these people on the sidewalk, theater, all people all around looking for somewhere to have a sleep, you know. It is very tough out here. You need the government assistance.
There's no disadvantage to owning a home at a young age. There's no disadvantage of that because at the end of the day, for your own, you understand, you can use it. It's an asset. It doesn't have to be a liability. It depends on how you use it. You get what I say? So if you're in a one position where you can own it and rent it out or sell it out or whatever, it's yours. So it's a major accomplishment. You understand? To own something like that in your early 20s, late 20s, early 30s. You get me? So there's no disadvantage to that.
Time now for the business report with Denise Williams.
Welcome to today's business report. I'm Denise Williams, here to bring you the stories shaping the financial world and guiding your journey to smarter business decisions. Let's dive into the top headlines. Jamaican-based Express Fitness announced the acquisition of California, USA-based brand Mighty Pilates as part of its wider expansion into the U.S. fitness market. Mighty Pilates is a fitness studio with 8 outlets across the state of California, opening the first studio in San Francisco in 2009. Express Fitness shared its intention to leverage the brand's capital to grow the Pilates studio network to 75 new outlets over the next 3 years. The Bank of Jamaica reports that remittance inflows climbed by 3.1% to US $515 million for January to February of this year when compared with the same period last year. The bank says 72% of this amount came from the USA, nearly 12% from the UK, 8% from Canada, and 7% from the Cayman Islands. Interestingly, other islands experienced remittance growth of 15%, 8.2%, and 0.6%, recorded for El Salvador, Guatemala, and Mexico, respectively. Investors can gear up for passive income from 2 listed companies. Productive Business Solutions Limited, PBS, has declared dividends to the perpetual cumulative redeemable preference shareholders as follows. To the 9.25% perpetual cumulative redeemable preference shareholders a dividend of US 0.23125 per share, and to the 10.5% perpetual cumulative redeemable preference shareholders a dividend of Jamaican $25.89 per share. The dividends are payable on June 30, 2025 to the perpetual cumulative redeemable preference shareholders on June 16, 2025. Next, for passive income, Wisynco Group Limited has advised that the Board of Directors at a meeting scheduled for June 26, 2025 will consider a dividend payment to shareholders. For the trading period ending June 19, 2025, these were the most actively traded stocks. Toll Road Manager Trans-Jamaica Highway Limited with 2,080,878 units traded, representing 23.09% of market sales volume. Alternative energy provider Wigton Energy Limited with 1,910,782 units traded, representing 21.20% of market sales volume. Investment firm QWI Investments Limited with 501,500 units traded, representing 5.56% of market sales volume. We now shift our focus to the Forex market rate set by the Bank of Jamaica. On June 19, 2025, the Bank of Jamaica reported US 37.96 million purchased and US 39.36 million sold by Forex traders. Forex traders earned $1.98 per dollar, selling the US at $160.61 and buying the US at $158.63. The Canadian dollar netted Forex traders $6.66 per transaction, with selling at $119.52 and buying at $112.86. The British pound yielded Forex traders $6.65 in profits, with selling at $216.36 and buying at $209.71. For the credit report tip of the day, success leaves clues. And as a founder, your credit score is one of the most powerful clues you can give to potential investors about your commitment, discipline, and vision. If you want to play at the highest level, you've got to master every area of your financial life, including your credit. Don't let a 3-digit number hold you back from building the business and life you deserve. Step up, take massive action, and use your credit score as a launchpad to attract the right investors and create unstoppable momentum for your business. And that wraps up today's business report. I'm Denise Williams, reminding you that every financial decision is a step toward your future. Until next time, stay focused, stay informed, and keep striving for success. See you soon.
In regional news, a major step in the region's climate resilience efforts. A new climate school is set to be established in Barbados. The facility, described as one of the first of its kind in the Caribbean, is expected to play a key role in strengthening the island's response to climate change. The announcement came from Prime Minister Mia Mottley during the official opening of the Oceania Innovation Hub. Ernesta Henry has the details.
This green woody area at Charleston Park, Colamarock, is where the revolutionary climate school will be constructed. It is located just a short distance away from the Oceania Innovation Hub in Carlisle Bay Street, St. Michael. Prime Minister Mottley says the new facilities will be a partnership between government and the United States-based XQ Foundation, which also partnered with government to make the Oceania Hub a reality.
Barbados Climate School, with this Oceania Hub, will be able not just to protect this country and this ocean and this land, but will play a significant part in helping the world to be able to help save this planet.
Architect Michael Murphy, who is the president of Michael P. Murphy Studios, which is focused on spatial change and transformation in the public realm, says a state-of-the-art purpose-built facility will be constructed to house the climate school.
A new site will emerge with 40 of these triangles in the future, a new purpose-built building for 800 students. We'll also be working on restoring the old Ursuline convent and installing classrooms there. And countries from across the Caribbean are asking how they can get a version of what we're building today.
And Prime Minister Motley is making it clear that the climate-resilient, spectacular-looking Oceania Innovation Hub, aimed at fostering innovation and education transformation, belongs to Barbadians.
The children of this country will find in this space a safe place for them to understand how they have come to evolve as island people with the relationship with the ocean and how they must protect both that ocean and protect themselves going forward. I know my country, and I say so because many will pass and see here and say, oh, this get built for fancy people from overseas. This get built for Bajans.
Barbados continues to be a leader in the climate change fight, standing among the first to have an Oceania Innovation Hub and a purpose-built climate school, which is on its way. Onesta Henry, CBC News.
Regional leaders gathered in St. Vincent and the Grenadines for a significant meeting of the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States Assembly, where time constraints gave rise to wider reflections on the institution's relevance and future direction. The session saw strong calls for greater collaboration and a more impactful role for the Assembly within the broader regional movement. SKN Newsline's Glenn Bart reports.
OECS heads and officials meeting in St. Vincent and the Grenadines to discuss legislative bills for the first time in the OECS Assembly found themselves constrained for time that stimulated discussion on the purpose of the Assembly in the context of the integration movement of the OECS, with the need expressed for the OECS Assembly to have a higher role in the sub-region. Various government and opposition leaders spoke on the related issues for some time, voicing the general opinion that the Assembly must be capable of doing more. Prime Minister Dr. Terence Drew urged his colleagues to use the institution and the OECS mechanisms to secure further benefits for the sub-region. Here are some of the viewpoints expressed by the political leaders during the 17th June sitting of the OECS Assembly.
The revised Treaty of Bastille, as you know, was in 1981. My home country, I don't think I can remember it. I may have been too small to remember even that. But I would say when you look at it, the essence of it is really to bring us closer together as a region. And as I reflect, as a very new Prime Minister, on the essence of a bill like this, which is really to unify us, but that would redound to the benefit of all of us who are members of this great organization.
So we have to be prepared to move to the route of political union, which should now usher in a divestment of some of our constitutional authorities. I agree because, I don't believe in, Madam Speaker, in common debates and talk about things just for talking sake. We have to act. When members of Parliament meet, it is not a tea party we're having. We come here to discuss serious matters affecting the lives of our citizens. And at the end of the day, a decision is taken. And so for that to get to that point, we have to do what we have to do.
That we are going to have meaningful discussions. And after the discussions, and after we would have agreed on the policies, we need to see a process of implementation. We need to see more collaboration, more discussion, not only at this table, but it needs to continue. Because after we would have concluded our business here, that's it in terms of the discussion with the opposition.
And Madam Speaker, I think that we can do better. I think that these bills only tokenize what we're supposed to be doing. I think we need a much more deeper integration. The OECS has proven without a doubt that we're on the right track. CARICOM has not. Can we continue to respect our CARICOM colleagues?
The occasion was the 7th sitting of the OECS Assembly in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, but the institution is headquartered in Antigua. Glenn Bart reporting for SK Newsline.
In sports, we begin with athletics. Olympic medal-winning athletes Roger Stoner and Rajinja Campbell have reportedly switched national allegiance to Turkey, drawn by lucrative financial incentives. The move, reported by Turkish media on Thursday, has been confirmed by senior officials in that country's track and field federation. Stoner, who made headlines at the Paris Olympics by setting a new game record in the men's discus with a throw of 70 meters, had previously attempted a transition to the National Football League before returning to athletics. Campbell secured a bronze medal in the men's shot put, a historic feat, as both athletes became the first Jamaicans to medal in their respective events at the Olympic Games. The two field event stars will now join former Jamaican sprinters Jack Harvey and Winston Barnes, who also switched allegiance to Turkey in recent years. The reported defection is raising new concerns about athlete retention and support structures in Jamaican athletics, particularly for non-sprint disciplines. In cricketing news, West Indies cricketers Alea Alain and Kiana Joseph have been penalized for disciplinary infractions during the second Women's ODI against South Africa, held at the 3Ws Oval in Barbados. Nasira Mohammed has the story.
The pair were found to have breached the ICC's Code of Conduct under Article 2.8, which addresses actions deemed to express disagreement with umpiring decisions during international fixtures. Aline received a 10% deduction from her match fee and 1 demerit point after reacting visibly to her dismissal, pausing on the field and making a gesture that indicated displeasure. Joseph's response to her dismissal was considered more demonstrative, resulting in a 50% match fee fine and 2 demerit points. Both players acknowledged their misconduct and accepted the penalties imposed by match referee Akhtar Ahmed from the Emirates ICC International Panel. As a result, no formal disciplinary hearing was required. The incident was officially reported by on-field umpires Jacqueline Williams and Nimali Pereira, along with third umpire Candice Laborde and fourth umpire Maria Abbott. Sanctions for level 1 breaches range from an official warning to fines up to half of a match fee, as well as 1 or 2 demerit points. Under ICC rules, once a player accumulates 4 or more demerit points within a 2-year period, these convert to suspension points, potentially leading to bans across formats. Demerit points are cleared after 24 months. Nasira Mohammed, TTT Sport.
And that's it for the weekend news on PBCJ. Pleasant viewing.